ought to be in pictures. You're wonderful to see. You ought to be in pictures.
Hello and welcome to Deep Dive Movie Reviews with my friend Steve Hackman and myself, James Marsh. This week we are talking Colin Trevorrow's Jurassic World Dominion.
Hey, but you know the drill. Before we head out on the film journey, if you haven't already subscribed to Deep Dive Movie Reviews, it would be a great favor to us if you went ahead and hit that subscribe button. And if you want, you could ding that bell. That way you never, ever miss a video. You'll be notified whenever one is uploaded. Also, if you love this episode, feel free to share it with a friend. We really appreciate it. Also, just a reminder, Deep Dive Movie Reviews does contain spoilers. So you've been warned. So you have been warned. So you've been warned. James?
Okay, so Jurassic World Dominion is now the sixth film in the Jurassic Park series, the third film in the Jurassic World sequel series, and this is the film that really kind of ties both of those franchises together. I mean, one is not a reboot of the other. Technically, they all exist in the same universe. But here, the big ticket is the fact that we have all three of the returning original cast members, Sam Neill, Laura Dern, and Jeff Goldblum, appearing on screen for the first time since 1993's Jurassic Park. Events now take place about 4 years after the events of Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. It's hard to keep track with what they're all called. And basically dinosaurs are out. They're off the island. They are walking amongst us. And we have had to, one way or another, deal with that. You know, there aren't millions of them. There are dozens of them, let's say. And it looks like, by and large, they have contained them within North America. There's a few aquatic ones, a few aerial ones, but by and large, it seems, you know, as with a lot of American films, that they deal only with what's going on in North America. The plot, such as it is,
I'll take that ever so slight jab. Yeah, yeah.
soft blow.
Oh, okay.
There we go. So the plot, very briefly, it's 4 years later. Dinosaurs are out. And there is now like a black market trading in dinosaurs. They are obviously very, very rare and very valuable, and people want them for all kinds of different reasons. There is also sort of a bunch of mercenaries looking for young Maisie Lockwood, who, as you will hopefully remember, is the cloned grandchild of, I think his name's Charles Lockwood, who was the co-founder of Jurassic Park, along with Richard Attenborough's Hammond. So people looking for dinosaurs, people looking for the kid. Needless to say, Maisie Lockwood is found, is kidnapped, which puts Owen Grady and Claire Dearing, played by Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard, into action mode. They have to set off on a globe-trotting mission to track her down and save her before she falls into the hands of Biosyn, which is the one company, the supposedly benevolent company that has won the exclusive rights to protect, research, contain, and hopefully not develop and reproduce dinosaurs. So, Steve, Jurassic World Dominion.
You know, James, I don't think there's been a huge misfire. We're up to the sixth, as you mentioned, incarnation of the Jurassic Park World Series. And this isn't like Police Academy 5 or 6. You know, they're not phoning these in. You know, love them or hate them, if you feel like they've gone a little off the rails a bit, by and large, these are tent-pole movies. These are still big blockbusters. They are putting big names, big money, big directors, big production values into this. You never feel like you're getting diminishing returns, so to speak. So by and large, I enjoyed this film. I loved seeing some of the old nostalgic characters coming back. I remember going to see the original Jurassic Park here in Hong Kong at Pacific Place. As you would know, that cinema there, big gang of us. I think there was about 10 of us. And I don't think any sequel could recreate the first time we saw dinosaurs come to life on screen. I mean, that whole Tyrannosaurus Rex in the original Jurassic Park still just sends shivers down my spine. And I remember going home on the MTR with all of our friends. We're all just like, oh, didn't it feel like it was really there, like dinosaurs are real. So having said that, I found this film enjoyable. They ticked a lot of the boxes well. Listen, this is not a deep film. This movie it's a lot of dinosaurs chasing humans around, a lot of implausibility going on at all different levels. I love the fact that we suddenly got cowboys and dinosaurs. And I think this is where we're starting to realize it's time to draw this whole story to a conclusion, because next I'm thinking, what are they going to do next? Dinosaurs on the moon, where do they go from here? So I thought it was a nice conclusion to the second trilogy, wrapping up the whole series together. Not a great movie, but a fun film, summer popcorn blockbuster, enjoyable.
See, I'm certainly with you on 1993's Jurassic Park being one of those sort of milestone movie experiences. I was 16, just done my GCSEs, so I'd like finished making my exams, and it was that summer. And I remember sitting in the cinema with my mates that opening weekend, and that first scene with the T-Rex, when the foot comes down in the mud. Yeah. I remember just thinking, holy shit. I also remember thinking, I'm a little bit old to be feeling as kind of scared as you are, and in awe of this moment, as I probably should be, but I really did. And it might be, if I'm completely honest, kind of the last time I've had that really sort of childlike sense of fear and awe that, oh my God, that is something I've never seen before.
James, do you remember the first time you saw the ripple of the water, when you heard the boom and then ripple? And I just as you were describing that, suddenly I'm back there and it's coming, and that shiver going up your spine. It was amazing.
And that's a classic Steven Spielberg moment, the way that he builds that slowly and creates tension. That's going back to Jaws, it's, building an atmosphere without showing the shark, as it were. But what I did feel with this film is that it lacked that sense of kind of childlike wonder. This is a movie about dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are incredible. They are huge. They are monstrous. They are fascinating. We should be in awe of them. Now, I know that they made that a kind of theme in the first Jurassic World movie, and I thought, that film certainly has its detractors, but I felt that one of the things they really got right that time, they were like, we have to make them bigger, louder, scarier, because people are bored of them. There's a great gag in that movie when they even obscure the moment where the T-Rex sort of attacks a little goat, which is the big scene in the first movie, and it's kind of like behind a crowd of people, because you're like, that doesn't mean anything anymore. And I think that was one of the moments where that film tried to actually sort of comment on, this need to go bigger, louder, stronger every time. And I felt that this movie sort of didn't really address that movie, certainly not specifically when it came to the dinosaurs. I don't remember a single scene really where I felt that sense of awe. I felt that sense of like, pushed back in my seat, like, oh wow, these still have the power to fascinate and to terrify. Instead, you get a film that tries to be something else. They had kind of carte blanche here. Dinosaurs are out there. They're in the world. This movie could be whatever it wanted to be. It didn't need to just be another movie about, aging paleontologists and out-of-work zookeepers running around a park. It could be anything, really. And what they chose, certainly in the first half, for it to be, is a kind of globe-trotting Indiana Jones, Ethan Hunt, Jason Bourne style sort of spy thriller, almost. Particularly, that sequence in Malta, that whole sequence really felt like ripped out of a Jason Bourne movie, but just with dinosaurs thrown into it. There's even a shot, there's the bike chase where Owen is being chased, or is chasing, I can't even remember who's chasing who, velociraptors through the streets. And then there's the shot where the velociraptor jumps off one building through the window into another building, and the camera follows him, and that is ripped straight out of the Bourne Ultimatum. And I was like, hang on, okay, you're that's deliberate. That's the only time that shot really happens in anything. And I'm like, of all the directions you could have gone into, I'm not sure that is the most satisfying choice.
Right. So what you're saying is, you think they went the safe route. They basically, found a few tropes, found a few things that have worked in other films, and then recreated them with dinosaurs.
It was kind of a tried and tested route for sure.
Yeah.
You know, when they had the opportunity to literally reinvent the franchise as anything, and they chose to go that way. They're like, well, let's just change from being this kind of franchise to being this kind of franchise because we know that works.
Yeah, well, I mean, to play devil's advocate, though, we know that they're wrapping this up, and unless they're going to open up a whole new trilogy.
Do we know they're wrapping it up?
Well, they say they are, but
I mean, just for a second.
Yeah.
But you know, look at how the movie ends, and it ends pretty much like all the others end. They're like, they're going to stay here, and everybody leave them alone this time, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's like, yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. Because we don't have any more. We don't have any more greedy capitalists out there that are going to try to.
Everybody really respects nature. They're going to be fine.
And
sorry, you were saying.
And it's another reason to keep white guys around is they get to be the evil capitalist guys in these movies now. Every
do.
Yes. We finally found a role that you can always play, which is played, I thought, pretty well by Campbell Scott. I've always enjoyed Campbell Scott, kind of a under the radar actor. You've seen him consistently for 30 years. But I've liked him ever since Singles. I think back in about 91.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's a great movie.
Yeah, Singles was great, and I also like him a lot. I saw him in a panel discussion at a film festival in Denver about 20 years ago, and him just talking about the craft and building networks and making movies with his friends and answering questions. Some of the answers that he said still stick with me from 20 years ago, and I always thought he's quite a good guy. So I enjoy seeing him up on the screen and him getting his due share.
Yeah, no, I thought he did a good job of that kind of Steve Jobs, Tim Cook-esque kind of socially introverted, megalomaniacal billionaire who, if only everybody understood, his vision, that it's not just about money. It's about something that I can't articulate very well, but something bigger, something pure. Yeah, I thought he was good. And I thought by and large, the big ticket in this movie is we've got everybody back, it's a legacy sequel. We've got, it's like Matrix Resurrections or Top Gun or Ghostbusters. We've got all the old stars back. The most interesting characters were the new ones. I felt that DeWanda Wise's pilot. Yeah. She's kind of like a mercenary pilot who, helps the good guys. I thought she did really well. Mamadou Ati, that we've seen in Article 81 or Archive 81? Archive 81 on Netflix. I thought he was great. Again, he was kind of like the lackey with a heart kind of thing. And then
that's where we saw him. I was trying to think where I've seen that guy before.
Yeah, it was Archive 81.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is a show we were gonna do and then decided not to.
Yeah, we got to the end and went, Yeah.
It shows promise that it never quite delivers on. Also, there's I want to say her name right. Hopefully, it's Daichen Lachman. I think is her name. I've seen her in Severance.
Oh, yeah.
And she feels like she's kind of channeling Vanessa Kirby in the Mission Impossible movies a little bit. Yeah, yes. And there's and there are kind of interesting moments where
I thought for a second it was Vanessa Kirby. I knew she was, but for a second I thought, is that Vanessa Kirby? Because she does bear a striking resemblance to her.
Yeah, and I mean she's a sort of fascinating looking person. She's got this incredibly sort of striking face, really, for want of a more nuanced way of putting it. But no, she does. She has a very sort of unique look, and it works incredibly well here. But then she has one of the elements in her sort of character that is never really capitalized on. The fact that she has managed, or the people she represents have managed to train velociraptors to kind of obey her little laser pointer thing. Yeah. And you're like, oh, that's cool. I wonder how that's going to play into things later. No, it's not. It doesn't at all. No. It's just one sequence where she just points it at the back of Owen, I think, as he runs off. And
those CIA agents, and they all have guns. They all have guns in their hands. And as soon as they get tagged, instead of shooting the dinosaurs, they start running. It's stuff like that just irritates me. It's those moments like you're trained CIA agents and you've got guns in your hands and you just decide, okay, I'm going to start running away from a velociraptor.
Well, this is it. I mean, there was a time when, if you were even within 6 feet of any dinosaur, you were doomed. And that was the end of you, and this would be a traumatic moment. Now, I mean, in that bizarre sequence, there's a scene where literally the man at Owen's feet gets his head bitten off by a dinosaur, and Owen literally just goes, Okay, anyway, what was I saying? And literally just turns around and starts talking to the person next to him. It's like someone's just had their head bitten off right next to you, right in front of you, and you're just gonna stand there. So there was a lot of that kind of stuff going on that really kind of frustrated me. I was like, the series has spent so long sort of building up rules to how we interact with these things or fail to.
Yeah.
And then it was all completely thrown out of the window just because they wanted to tell this kind of runny, shooty, shouty story that didn't really go anywhere. And it was all just a big excuse in the end, just to get everybody back on an island populated by dinosaurs to go through the motions of the same thing all over again.
That's the thing, is you can only have so many chase sequences where the stars run into a cage or something where they can shut the door and then have the thing slam into you've seen it once, you've seen it twice, you've seen it probably 20 times now. And in this film, they continuously do the same tropes, which I found perfect example. Midway through the movie, I'm already starting to think about the Campbell Scott figure. This is a guy who's at the top of this big organization. He should have an entourage around him. Yet in my mind, I'm already starting to think, okay, how is he going to be separated from everyone else at the end of this? And he's suddenly going to find himself thinking he's safe, but he's not, because there's going to be a dinosaur is going to pop up and we're going to get that fateful scream and then it'll be over. I know exactly. This is how it's become so much a parody of itself that it can't even escape from its own parody.
Well, yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. But then it leads to sequences, because you've got all of these characters reassembled, as it were, and it's taken time to introduce us to other characters that are all kind of flawed yet absolved, if you like, over the course of the film. You have this extended sort of chase sequence in the park, or what, the reserve, or whatever it is at the end, where you've got about 8 characters literally kind of all escaping in a line at the same time. And you're like, I don't think any of these characters are going to die, because they're literally Sam Neill, Laura Dern. You're like, Jeff Goldblum, maybe.
Yeah.
Because, if anyone's going to be sacrificed, it would be Jeff Goldblum. I mean, remember, his character in the book dies in the first book.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
And now he's working with the bad guys, and just gets absolved because he's like, oh, well, I'm Jeff Goldblum, so you can't blame me.
Yeah.
But essentially you've got this sort of human chain of people, and you're like, well, I think they're all going to be okay, which just brings down the level of sort of threat and excitement.
Yeah, the stakes
to rock bottom.
The stakes are lowered. I did think, though, for a moment that Jeff Goldblum might have died, sacrificing himself at that one key moment. But of course, no, he lives. And I mean, who am I kidding? I don't want Jeff Goldblum to die. Nobody wants Jeff Goldblum to die. He's Jeff Goldblum. You just love him. And yeah,
for sure. But he had that moment where he is essentially doing the exact same thing that he did in the first movie.
Absolutely.
And very deliberately so, which is the scene that leads to his death originally in the Michael Crichton novel. He is injured in the same way, but then he doesn't recover in the way that he does in the film. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that would kind of make sense. Someone's got to go, otherwise there is no tension, there are no stakes, like you say. And that would kind of make sense that if he was the one to go, because the other two are like nicely paired off as romantic couples or whatever, and you're like, okay, that's right. But then no, they don't even do that. They're just like, no, we can't afford to lose any of these characters, and so it is very frustrating because if not for the fact that it just keeps the body count down, and in a movie like this, you need a high body count. There are all these faceless mercenaries and whatever in the first half. You're like, well, no one cares.
No.
Any of those.
No, you don't have, like in the first movie where the bad guy's sitting on that porta potty toilet, and that's just.
But he's the lawyer,
scenes.
so no one.
Yeah.
So no one.
That's
cares.
it. But it was that kind of, like you said, it's that Steven Spielberg. He doesn't give us a nameless, faceless person that we don't care about. He gives us a lawyer that we've seen act in a very negative way. And so when he gets his comeuppance, we're all like secretly, that's cool. But with the mercenaries, like you said, they were mostly nameless, faceless guys, and we didn't really. They're the red shirts in Star Trek.
Yeah, exactly that.
And so
they're stormtroopers. That's all they are. They're just stormtroopers.
Yeah.
And I mean, the one effort that the film I thought made in the first half to do something new and different with the existing sort of ideas, if you like, was bad, but at least it was different. And that was with the giant locusts.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know, the kind of the movie starts, you've got this plague of giant locusts. It's like, you came here for dinosaurs, how about big bugs? You're like, no, but at least, you know, there was a scheme, there was a plan, right? They had all been injected with sort of prehistoric DNA that had mutated them to a larger size, and they were eating crops all over the nation except Biosyn's crops. And you're like, oh, that's a fairly nefarious scheme, you know, that's kind of naughty. You're up to something here. And then it doesn't go, it just gets forgotten about. It doesn't go anywhere. And you know, a lot of that first half was just, you know, just these plot strands just left dangling.
At times I got frustrated as well too with some of the simplistic dialogue. They had to spoon feed every piece of information to me, where when they're explaining what the locusts will do, oh, that'll, you know, have a chain reaction on the this, the that, and that will affect the food supply across the world. You know, the millions will go, you know, will die of starvation. And it's like, you have to give every point of information. It's like, I'm thinking this, I just don't like being dumbed down to. Yes, some of the science is going to be pseudoscience, you know, from Jurassic Park, but at least it was kind of fun. Like when Richard Attenborough would take us on that ride and explain how the genetics was going to work. Okay, yeah, they're probably embellishing a lot, but it looked really cool and scientific, and you felt almost like you were learning something. But in this, I kind of felt like I'm just being, you know, spoon-fed information because we're all idiots now or something.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I mean, I really like Michael Crichton as an author. You know, he's kind of probably one of my favorite authors. And what was so great about his books is that he sells you pseudoscience in a really believable, technical, complicated way. You know, he takes you into sort of, you know, DNA sequencing and cloning and chaos theory and all these things in the Jurassic Park novel. And you're like, okay, yeah, I think I'm along for the ride. And at the same time, he's like, and you're being chased by a dinosaur. Yeah. That we have created. You know, and a number of his books do that. They, you know, they take a various sort of kind of scientific development, then run it a little bit further, a little bit into speculative fiction, and then he creates a thriller out of that moment. And you're like, okay, this is really cool, this is really fun. And even in the very first movie, they already started to kind of dumb that stuff down, and it's fine because it's there as a roller coaster. You know, on screen you don't need to go into chaos theory as much as you do, and it worked that you have this only one character who really understands chaos theory, and so he's literally explaining it to everybody as you go along in the simplest of ways, because Sam Neill in particular is a bit dumb when it comes to computers and stuff like that. So he's like, I don't get anything, explain everything to me really, really simply. And so it kind of worked. But when you get to this level where you've got a room full of scientists who are working on a project and they're all turning to each other going, but this would mean, it's like, yes, I know, we've spent 20 years studying it. You know, you don't need to, it's a pet peeve and it happens a lot. And but I'm right with you. It's incredibly frustrating.
How did you feel about the not so overt or subtle message of climate change in this film? Because I just felt this was almost like Don't Look Up, where that film used the meteor coming as an allegory of climate change and our inability to do anything about it. In this film, again, I felt climate change is what we're talking about, even though they're talking about other issues, because everything in it is an argument that we hear every day about, you know, climate change, almost like extinction is a foregone conclusion. Okay, but the big capitalist corporations realize that, but we're going to make our money in our bubbles and the rest of the world can go to hell in a handbasket, which was a lot of the message that I was getting in this film. And where in the first film, Jurassic Park has always had a bit of a preachy message going back to the first film, but I felt this one was getting too preachy, like too on its soapbox. I just felt like I'm not looking to be in the front pew of, you know, some debate about, you know, I just tell me the story. I don't need the subtle. There's some monologues, even when Jeff Goldblum goes into his rant against Campbell Scott. As much as I like Jeff Goldblum, it felt so contrived and so preachy, as opposed to when he gave a similar one to Richard Attenborough's character in the first film, which seemed more genuine and authentic and really talking about what does it mean to put ourselves in a position where we can make these choices to bring long extinct creatures back, and the philosophical ramifications of that. I found that an interesting moral message, rather than this, you capitalists, really, you're just going off and you're going to do your own thing, and you guys disgust me, you know that, you really just disgust me. And I just felt like, oh, come on, I wanted to move on very quickly.
Yeah, no, I think you've absolutely nailed it. I mean, the first film has this idea of, you know, just because you could doesn't mean you should. Mm-hmm. You know, and you never stop to think about the ramifications of your actions. You just slapped it on a lunchbox, I think he says, and sold it to the public. Yeah, and this one it is kind of hammering it home with a sledgehammer a little bit, you know. Just,
did you think, because in the first movie, Richard Attenborough's character was not really an evil guy. He was not a nefarious person. He had his grandkids there. In his mind, he's creating something beautiful that he wants to share with the world. And Jeff Goldblum just thinks, I think you're drawing some wrong conclusions. Whereas this film is very much, Campbell Scott's character is a bad guy. He is, like you said, it's Tim Cook, it's Jeff Bezos, it's Elon Musk. They're all rolled up into one. And even the name Biosyn, it's like
sin. It's like a sin against nature. Yeah, that's literally the name of your company. Yeah. And I get it. It's with a Y. It's supposed to be synergy or whatever. But no, his name is literally like a sin. It's like sin against nature. It's like, come on. Yeah. But yeah, and what you never get in this movie is really an opportunity for what's his name, Campbell Scott's character Dodgson, to really articulate what he wants to do, what he's trying to do. You know, at no point does he really sort of even get a chance to sort of pontificate about how he's going to make the world a better place and how he's going to improve food chains and crop production or whatever it is. You know, we're kind of guessing, you know, right from the get-go. It's like you're mutating bugs to destroy the competition so that you can capitalize on food supply. And yeah, you've somehow won this dinosaur contract as well from the government, so that you are now solely in charge of containment and looking after them. And it's just like you're just flat out evil from day one, and you've got the government in your pocket somehow. So there's no nuance to it, and I think that is a point in the first film that is articulated better. That he is the kind of the flea circus guy. Yeah. You know, he is the showman, if you like. He wants to create something for the kids to go, ooh, ah, wow, that's amazing at. Yeah. And I think, as I harken back to what I said earlier, that's what this film lacks. And not only does it lack the wow factor from an entertainment perspective, but it lacks the mistake. Because there's a kind of sort of tragic naivety to Hammond, John Hammond, Richard Attenborough's character. You know, he wanted something good, but he was just short-sighted or misled or naive, or whatever, and created something monstrous by mistake. Whereas this is just bad guys out to do bad things, make money, exploit everybody, and you're like, and it's not even to do with the dinosaurs, really.
No.
It seems it's like it doesn't seem like actually the dinosaurs have got much to do with his plan. Even I guess he's gonna make more and sell more. Yeah, but they don't seem to really even discuss that. So it's my biggest problem with this film is just I really felt that the dinosaurs were just completely sidelined.
Yeah.
You know, they're no longer part of the story even, and you're like, well, what the hell are you doing?
I couldn't get over some plausibility issues where, if you have these like fist-size locusts that are devastating the nation, where's the government in this? Like the government would be all over this. There would be lockdowns. They would be going in and cleaning this up. There would be no biosyn that's over like the military would be in this. And you know, when they talk about how, you know, the world has come to the place where we're coexisting with dinosaurs, well, really, what's China's perspective on that? Like, is China, do they have the same feeling about this as we do? Is this just an American thing? Is this a North American thing? Like you said, we don't really see them other than in Malta. There's a black trade, is that the word? Black trade? No,
black market.
There's black market trade going on. But I'm left to think, wait a second, what's going on in the rest of the planet? There's all these other countries. What are their positions on it? Granted, I know it's a 2-hour movie, but there's just there's nothing to indicate where they'll just say the world has, you know, agreed that we're going to coexist. I'm thinking, who made that decision?
Right. Especially when you're seeing sort of in the montage, sort of triceratops walking on the African savannah, and you're like, how did they get there?
Yeah,
you know, from Jurassic Park, which is off the coast of Costa Rica or whatever. And if you did get there, what does the Kenyan government think about it? You know, are they happy to have? I mean, you know, they may well be, but you need to kind of address that. And also, it starts off with these locusts, the size of a cat or the size of a shoe or whatever, however big they are, and it's established later on that they are a threat to people as well. You know, they're just nasty big things. But then right from that opening introduction, they come in, they eat the crops, and then they disappear or they fly off. And you're like, no. I mean, these would be a murderous threat to everybody, and they would strip the nation and then move on to the next country. They would fly across the ocean. You know, they would, at the rate they're going, they would wipe out the country in like a week. But they would attack people too. And then so it didn't kind of make sense. And I know you can't really nitpick, you know, the logic behind a movie in which dinosaurs have been recreated, whatever. You're like, we're picking our battles here a little bit selectively, but they have 5 films before them that have established the credibility of, okay, this is the thing. We don't need to prove this to you anymore. If you're here, then you're along for the ride and you understand that dinosaurs are a thing again, right? But then what they're introducing that's new is just bollocks. It's just nonsense. You know? It really is. And you're just like, well, and there are people who will say, oh, you're reading too much into it, you know, so it's just an entertainment, it's a roller coaster ride. And it's like, yeah, I know, and it has been since the beginning, but it's had a modicum of intelligence behind it. Which has now just completely been dispensed with.
You know, we've talked about Jeff Goldblum a bit and Campbell Scott. What do you think about the rest of the cast? We've got Laura Dern, we've got Sam Neill, we got Bryce Dallas Howard, we got Chris Pratt. What's your verdict there?
Well, I think, you know, by and large, I mean, it's funny because it was nice seeing Sam Neill and Laura Dern kind of get together at the end.
Sure,
you know, you're kind of like, oh, that's nice. You know, there was never really any doubt or anything like that, but you're kind of like, okay, that's nice. And she manages to, you know, hold her own. You know, it's been nearly 30 years that
30 years.
It was 2001. She was in Jurassic Park 3, which I still think is the worst in the series. That movie is an absolute.
I think it's universally recognized that that's the weakest link of any of the films was Jurassic Park 3.
It's so half-hearted.
Yeah.
You know, it's just absolutely, the plot makes sense. Anyway, so this is better than Jurassic Park 3. That much I will say.
Yeah.
And this is Laura Dern coming back after 21 years. And I think she looks great, you know, and I think she does a good job. And I think Sam Neill's just bumbling around doing the Sam Neill thing, doing the Alan Grant thing. I don't think that character has really evolved at all. I think the character that has evolved is Bryce Dallas Howard's character, but also quite implausibly. You know, in Jurassic World, she's the business headed person. She's the one who wants to exploit everybody and run the park, and she doesn't care who gets in the way, and she's willing to make the wrong choices again and again and again that result in heavy loss of life because the park, money. And now she's not only like had a complete change of heart and is a kind of activist, but she's also an incredibly capable kind of action star where she's leaping from roof to roof and doing somersault through windows and all kinds of stuff. And you're like, okay, you know, that's for me, that's the one where you're kind of like, wow, you have changed, young lady. You have changed.
That's it. She found Jesus, man. She's yeah, she's gone full activist now.
Yeah. So I mean, how about you? Were there any characters that sort of stood out for you, performances that you thought were particularly good or bad?
Yeah, to me, everybody's fine. Bryce Dallas Howard's fine. Chris Pratt is always Chris Pratt. He's Star-Lord in just about everything he does, and it's fine. I've always been a big Sam Neill fan. I've always enjoyed films that he's in. He brings a gravitas, but I agree with you. There's been almost no evolution in this person's character. Jeff Goldblum's character has obviously evolved, and it was nice seeing, kind of where he's kind of gone through a process and has come out the other side. He's still morally intact and made a few bucks along the way. And Laura Dern, everything, I could copy everything you said. It was the nostalgia aspect of this was fun. And, people are going to talk about this, and it was great to bring them all back. It was fun. And that's half the fun of these films that we keep seeing coming out, the Ghostbusters Afterlife and the Matrix, and, seeing these familiar characters that have been part of our zeitgeist for decades now. We get one last dance with them. And it's fun. So I'm not going to, even though I've been a little critical of the film, I enjoyed it, and it was fun. And I feel like I'm wrapping it up now. This is like my closing statement or something. But yeah, I thought the cast it's solid, nothing exceptional, and I don't think anybody dropped the ball.
No, I think the one character that I think deserved a stickier ending, that he didn't deserve, I think, the kind of absolution that he gets, if you like, is BD Wong's character, Dr. Henry Wu. Yeah. Who's the scientist, the real nuts and bolts geneticist, who gets his hands dirty every time. He's always there on the front lines. And even Malcolm, Jeff Goldblum's character, has this line. He goes, it's that guy. Nothing good. Yeah. Bad things happen when that guy's around. And he's just like, oh, I was misled, and gets this kind of almost, completely absolved of any responsibility from anything. And at the end, you see him letting the locusts back out or something, and they're better now. Or so. I didn't get it at all. I was like, no, he's the guy that's going to get dragged through the courts because he's last man standing. And as Malcolm says, he has been there on ground zero of all of these problems. He's the one that deserves to.
I still like BD Wong though, because of him playing the gay wedding planner alongside Martin Short in Father of the Bride. I rewatched that. Those two are just, I always wanted them to make a TV series based with Martin Short and BD Wong doing a wedding planning. But
there's still time.
There's still time. What I thought was interesting though, James, before we wrap this up, is 30 years ago, we were amazed at the CGI of the dinosaurs. And 30 years later, there hasn't been a huge evolution. I mean, it was still good, but I didn't feel like we saw, maybe we saw a couple things that are kind of new and were kind of interesting, but there hasn't been an evolutionary change in my understanding of, I still feel like the actors are reacting to something that's not there. There's still this element that, and I was hoping after 30 years, we would have removed some of that. And yet it still feels to me like that the technology, at least from what I'm seeing, is not much different than what I saw in 1993.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's, I think, falls at the feet of the director and how he guides his actors, I think, more than anything else. Because I think, the effect work is great, but it's great in a way that I think we've come to expect, if not demand, these days. What was great about the first movie is I think there's something crazy, like only about 70 effect shots in the whole movie. There was a lot of animatronics in that first Jurassic Park, a surprising amount of like model and puppet work that these days you don't really see that much of. I think there is a little bit in this one, but I think by and large it's all done digitally now. And again, I think that was far more to do with Spielberg just being a genius at that kind of thing. suggest stuff that's happening off screen without actually needing to show you. Now it's such an orgy of effects work.
Yes.
It's like all you get is just thousands of effect shots in movies like this, where everything has got some bit of CGI in it.
Spielberg did Duel, and hit one of his first films, and that is a masterclass in how do you put it, what you just said, of you never actually see the enemy, you never see the face, everything is always implied, everything is always suggested. He keeps up a frenzy of anxiousness and fear and anxiety over the course of a whole movie, and you still don't know who Dennis Weaver is actually fighting in this, or who the antagonist is in this film. It's absolutely brilliant, and he's carried that theme through so much of his work that we never. He's the master of, I don't have to show you everything, I can imply it. It's going to be far more terrifying.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's all the power of suggestion and getting you to do the legwork using your own imagination. I mean, the classic is Jaws. Yes. Go back and watch Jaws and just see how little of the shark you actually see, and how late on it is in the film until you really see shots of the shark. He uses everything, be it barrels to broken off jetties to anything else, to stand in place for the shark. And there were practical reasons for that, but there were also...
I was just going to say, Spielberg in interviews has said he would have put the shark in more.
Oh, sure. But it kept breaking. Yeah.
It kept breaking. It looked like crap.
Right.
Better to keep it hid.
So it challenged him, and then you see this with a lot of filmmakers all the time, that when they've got low budgets and they don't have the resources at their disposal, that clearly someone like Colin Trevorrow has carte blanche pretty much to make that movie that he made now. You have to be inventive, you have to be creative, and that's where you get your best work. I mean, what I'll say about Colin Trevorrow, I mean, he did Jurassic World, the first one, and then he went off and he was supposed to do the last Star Wars movie, but then they got J.J. Abrams to come back, and so he then came back to this franchise. And he's just one of those kind of technical workmen like directors. He'll just do what he's told and get the job done. What I will say in his credit, though, is that he did a little independent movie called Safety Not Guaranteed, which was kind of like a Sundance hit with Mark Duplass and Jake Johnson, who he then put in Jurassic World. He's one of like the guys in the operating room in Jurassic World, and Aubrey Plaza. And that's a really good, inventive, creative little indie movie that really didn't have much money, about a guy who claims that he's a time traveler.
Okay. All right, check that out.
It's well worth checking out. I think it might be on Netflix, but well worth checking. It's called Safety Not Guaranteed, and that's really good.
Okay.
But I still think it's his best movie.
So James, wrapping up Jurassic World Dominion, what kind of instrument for scoring are we going to give this? What are we going to...
Giant locusts?
Giant locusts, yes. How many giant locusts are we going to give to... I can kind of guess where you're going with this, but I'm curious what we're going to...
Okay, yeah, I got to be honest. I'm a fan of the franchise. I was not a fan of this movie. I felt let down. I won't quite go so far as betrayed, but I just felt that they didn't show up and give us the movie that we wanted, and every time they chose to do something different, it was a poor choice. It took the franchise in a direction that it didn't have any right to go in, and nor did it it didn't bear any fruit. And I just felt that it lacked that sense of wonder, that sense of awe, that sense of spectacle that is built into the DNA of a Jurassic Park movie. So it's not a disaster, it's technically competently put together, but it really didn't tick the box for me. So I'm going to give it two giant locusts out of 5.
Fair enough, James. I probably like it a little more than you. For me, seeing Sam Neill, Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum come back brings that nostalgia. I thought the story has way too many holes in it for me. Going far beyond what we'd expect in a movie that has dinosaurs in it. So, but in the end, I did find it a little more enjoyable than you did. I'm going to give it 3 giant locusts. I'm going to recommend that people see it, but this is far from being the best of the franchise.
Yes. I mean, it's not, as I said, it's not Jurassic Park 3, but it's not good.
Yeah. Fair enough. All right, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Deep Dive Movie Reviews. As I mentioned at the beginning, if you haven't subscribed, do us a favor. We really want to thank the first 660 subscribers we already have. Trying to get to 1,000. You could help us out with that. James?
That's right. Yes. Tell your friends, tell your family, log on to their account and just subscribe through that anyway. Help us get up over 1,000, and then that's going to really help us. It'll help our visibility and help us create more videos going forward. In the meantime, please let us know in the comments, what did you think of Jurassic World Dominion? How do you think it sort of weighs up against the rest of the franchise? Which are your favorites? And what else would you like to see us review in the future?
Till next episode.
You ought to be in
Goodbye.
pictures. You're wonderful to see. You ought to be in pictures. Oh, what a hit you would be.